Welcome back, everybody, to another special weekend edition of Paranormal the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to, make the world seem a little more normal. Does it never really happen? Yeah, no. Yeah, no, no. The world's not meant to be normal. But as always, I brought a great guest to join me on this quest. And today's guest is Simon Brown, a past life regression hypnotherapist and also host of the Our Paranormal Afterlife and Alien UFO podcasts. Pleasure having you on, brother. I love having another paranormal podcaster on always. It's always a good time. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a good sunny day here in England. Looks very sunny where you are as well.
It is after it poured last night. So, the sun after the storm.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess I'll start with the first question I ask everybody on the show always. What brought you down the road to the paranormal? What made you want to head that way in life?
I don't know really. I've always been interested. I remember being 10 years old and going to the local public library and getting books out on the paranormal, whether it was Bigfoot or ghosts or UFOs, just all sorts of things. And, just showing my age now, that would have been about 1974, 75. So it's not like there was an internet and you could, find information so easily. And I've had some experiences throughout my life that, when you have these experiences, it shows you that there's more going on than we realize. And it just seems like there's some people who never have these experiences, or perhaps they have something happen, but they just write it off and ignore it. But it's been a
Exactly.
fascination my whole life.
Well, let me say, I was one of those people for a long time that had no experiences at all. For a long time. And like I'm talking 25, 30 years. And then like I was same as you. I was that kid. I mean, in the 70s it had to be even worse. I can't imagine that. Because I was in the 90s trying to find those books in the library as a kid, and you couldn't find them even. Like there was like one or two, and that was it in my small town library. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine in the 70s how hard it would have been. There wasn't even like a lot of the famous books were not even really quite out just yet. But yeah, I mean, it's hard when you have no experiences to you believe, but you don't know why you believe because you never experienced
Yeah.
anything. You feel like there's just got to be more out there. That's the thing. There's got to be more out there that you can't they can't be explained. I mean, there has to be. Life would be boring without it.
Yeah. It's almost like
That's
intuition or something. You've got a gut feeling for it.
exactly. I mean, you have a feeling like yeah, you just have a gut feeling that something's there. I mean, never actually seen it. I never seen an extraterrestrial in real life with my naked eye, as far as I know. I'm not gonna say I'm 100% sure on that one, but as far as I know. But yeah, I still have believed most of my life that they're real and that they're out there and that they're among us. Like it's just there's so much proof out there. People are just afraid. I mean, actually, one of my previous guests, Leslie Shaw, just sent me something yesterday about a document released by the Senate about UAPs, and I haven't had a chance to actually sit down and read the whole thing yet. But ooh, it sounds like the government's getting closer and closer to admitting things.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. But well, when was your first paranormal experience? That's usually where I go next on this.
Well, there's a couple of things that happened when I was a kid that I'm not sure about because they were quite small. And there was one night I woke up, maybe I was 5 or 6 years old, and there was a dog growling in the bedroom, but we didn't have a pet dog. And so I'm not sure to make of that because I was definitely awake. It wasn't a dream because scared the life out of me. And I was full of adrenaline. There's no way I was dreaming it or imagining it. But it wasn't till later on I went to the College of Psychic Studies in London towards the end of the 1980s. And it wasn't I was a student there, but you could pay to sit with the students who are learning mediumship, or maybe they're learning how to do trance mediumship or clairvoyance. And then there were people that were doing past life regression, and there was a trance medium there that was really good. And you just pay a little bit of money, and then the students can practice on you. and I started getting these little sort of psychic flashes, I'd call them. And there was also a point where I saw a UFO really up close. And so the mediums were giving me information that I couldn't deny. And it was seemed to be some real communication from the spirit world. And then I was taken through a past life regression that was really powerful. So there's that idea with the paranormal that when you start looking at it, it starts looking back. And so I
Hmm.
think that maybe that's me being so interested in it and starting to see these mediums and all these things that then things started coming back to me.
See, it's actually funny that once you it's true. Once you look into it, it does start looking back because I mean, what's that old saying? Once you stare into the abyss starts to stare back. But I mean, because ever since I started podcasting, because I live in a possessed house, I don't like to call it a haunted house because it's not really scary. It's just a possessed house. And ever since I started podcasting, every time I have a medium on, they always just say like, "Do you have spirits in your house?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "They're all around you right now. They're just hanging out around you, listening." I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because they can sense I'm talking about like things or them exclusively sometimes, but so they just tend to hang around me, and I'm kind of I have slight empathic ability, so like I get a weird cold feeling when like they're like right next to me. Like I just can feel it throughout my body that they're there. I mean, they don't bother me. They don't mess with me or anything, or like they don't they don't slam drawers, they don't slam cabinets or anything. They're not poltergeist by any means. They're just kind of hanging out. And
Yeah.
apparently every time I talk to a medium, there's more of them than there was last time. I can't explain it. I feel like my house is a freaking ghost Airbnb, and I don't even know it. But
Yeah. I mean,
so
I've had
they
that.
did.
Sorry. I was going to say, I've interviewed mediums on my podcast, and a couple of times after we finished recording, they've said to me, I'm getting this connection with some guy in your house. And they talk about how he's always really well dressed and he had this beard that he would take his time with. And who's this? Who's this remind you of? I was like, well, it doesn't remind me of anybody. So I wonder if there's just somebody here who has been here for a long time. We just happen to move in.
Well, yeah, I mean that. Oh, I mean the previous owners of my house were the ones who built it back in the '60s. So my house doesn't have a long history of people living in it. So I mean, I know that both of them are here from what I've been told, and apparently it's just a lot of other random people. But I mean, because yeah, because this wasn't Native American land really before that. So I mean, there's no history to this land. I've been to other places in this around this area where yeah, 100% there'd be spirits from hundreds and hundreds of years of people living there, passing on, blah blah blah. Native American spirits from it being a burial ground. I've been to places like that in Massachusetts because I mean, there's a lot of those in Massachusetts, but sadly, but I mean, so I mean, yeah, the spirits are everywhere, and not all of them want to hurt us. That's the thing that people don't get. It's not like the movies. Like they're not trying to haunt us. They're not trying to scare us normally. They're just trying to exist, I guess is the best way to put it. Exist without living. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple of guests who've talked about times they've seen a spirit in their house, and the spirit's reaction was, "What? Hang on, you can see me? I was just passing through, or I didn't realize you guys could see me."
it makes you curious, like what the afterlife really is. Because I mean, well, actually, that's a good topic almost. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your like what have you in all your studies and all the people you've had in your show? 'Cause I know you have more episodes than I do, and that's saying something for God's sake. What theory have you put together for the afterlife? Because I know I've accumulated my own theory about the afterlife by this point.
I think it's a lot weirder, a lot stranger than we think it is. I get the impression that when you die, you kind of move on into a space that you're expecting or that makes sense for you. And way back in like 1900, and they had the Society for Psychical Research, and they had this place, they kind of called it Summerland, and it was the British psychical research people, and they would say when you die, you go to this wonderful place with green fields and nice little cafes where you can have tea, and the animals are there, and it's a beautiful English countryside, and they call it Summerland. But if they're talking through mediums to people that have deceased that they know are describing that, you might say it's idyllic England. And it may be that when you die, your idea of heaven is the place where you arrive. And so for English people, it's a wonderful green countryside with cafes where you can have tea and, that kind of thing. But I think after a while, you get acclimatized to the afterlife and you start to realize that you don't need a human body. And that when you get there, you kind of manifest one because that's what you'd expect. But as time
Y-
passes, that kind of drifts away and you become more soulful and more of a spirit, and don't construct for yourself a human body. And you move on from that space of Summerland, and it becomes more of a spiritual space. People have near-death experiences say it's just a place full of light, or others have said it's quite dark, but it's a wonderful place to be. And then there's also, when you die, people with near-death experiences talk about how they have 360-degree vision, and they see colors that don't exist here, and their hearing is amazing, and that when they communicate, it's all kind of telepathic. But when they're asking a question, they get the answer before they've even finished the question. And it's almost like your intellect is so much faster. And that maybe because the physical brain isn't slowing it down anymore. And that's what the
ex-
brain does.
yeah, I mean, that does make sense. That does make sense. So before I get into, well, my theory, which is, I'll shorten it because my theory is long, but do you believe that reincarnation is possible, or?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's because I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I take people through past life regression. I do it almost
True.
every day. And I've talked to so many people who study, children with past life memories. And I've been taken through past life regression myself and had little confirmations of that past life was real. So it's, yes, I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Okay. Just want to make sure. See, uh, I mean, I do somewhat believe that I don't like to call it heaven because, I don't subscribe to religions. So I don't like to call it heaven. I do believe there is a dimension that we may go to when we pass. And I believe in the idea of a personalized heaven. That does make sense to me that would be the case. I mean, a lot of science fiction shows have kind of gone off that idea that we all have our own personalized heavens. And shout out to Supernatural, especially. But I mean, it's just I've been told by so many people that there's an extraterrestrial kind of control to reincarnation to the afterlife, that we there's kind of a dimension in space almost that we go to when that's like a DMV waiting room when we die. And if we basically are waiting for our next turn to go around the planet again, and you're basically waiting for your number to be called to go back down. And when it comes, you go into another body, you go into, I mean, I believe it's somewhat possible we may go into other species bodies as well, whether it be extraterrestrial species or just another animal species on our planet. I believe that we can go between species. We may have been a bird in a past life, or who knows, any animal really, a lion, tiger, take a pick. But I also know that I've had past life regressionists on before as well who say that they've had people who tell when they do the regression they are on a different planet. They're on a planet that's not Earth, and that to me kind of lends credence to the fact that we might be able to go into extraterrestrial bodies as well, because we might all be extraterrestrial spirits to begin with. That I mean, because I'm sure the whole ancient alien idea that this Earth was founded by this Earth was founded by multiple different extraterrestrial species. They kind of either created us or evolved us. Take your pick. I mean, I'm not sure which one it really is because I wasn't there, but somehow they were involved, and I think that it's extraterrestrials have a lot to do with it. I think that's why I think they watch us because they're watching to see what we do when we're down here. They're watching it, and I think that has a lot to do with what happens in the afterlife. Is based on what we do down here, and I think that's how they know. Is because they're always watching. Maybe we
Yeah,
are a reality TV show for them. I don't know.
but there's the thing there that we could say, if you can reincarnate as ETs, they're not any different to us. And we kind of, like you're saying, they're watching us, but then they are us or we are them because we've had past lives as ETs. And so it's it's hard to get your head around, isn't it? And it maybe we
It's
both describe
yeah,
exactly the same thing, but we've got our own vernacular and our own way of doing it. But
exactly. I mean, it's hard to get your head around because, like you said, we are them, they are us. I am the walrus, cuckoo's cuckoo. But but I mean, it's just it's true. I mean, we are, I don't know. Maybe there is a I don't know. Maybe it is like a more evolved brains function that they don't need to watch us. That they just have all knowing. Like maybe some of them just have all knowing and they know what we did in our lives just by our spirit coming up there and them seeing our spirit. They could say, okay, you did a lot this life, so you get to kind of upgrade to a better life this time on Earth, or whatever planet we descended to. Or no, you didn't do it. You didn't live this life the way you're supposed to. I mean, because I've been told that we have. I've been told by past life regressions before as well that we have kind of like a goal each life that we're supposed to learn new things each life that we're supposed to progress. And some people get stuck in the same thing each life. In each life, they're addicts of some kind. In each life, they're bad people in general, abusers, what have you. So some people don't learn their life lessons, and I think that's where the idea of hell comes in. Like I know that was just a scare tactic that the Catholic Church created to, you know, really scare people to do it right. But I think there is some kind of I've been told by people who astral project and who lucid dream that there are bad dimensions out there, and what if we have to go to one of them, like when we don't live our lives right? Like, what if that's your punishment? You just spend a life in a bad dimension that's scary and evil in some way, or has creatures that want to kill you constantly. Like, I don't know. I'm hypothesizing here, but
yeah, well, there are people who have distressing near-death experiences, aren't there? Who go to awful places, but they find their way out of that most of the time. And I talked to somebody who was kind of astral projecting. He said that he was out on the street and there were this bunch of guys sitting around on a park bench having a beer, and he said that they seemed like they were dead spirits and they were just sitting back having a beer. And he said to them, you can go on into the light, you can move on from here. And they said, yeah, but we're having fun right here, having a beer and talking to each other.
which makes sense. I mean, some spirit it makes sense. Some spirits are not going to want to leave. I mean, why? Especially. I mean, there's also those spirits who are attached to people, who are attached to things, who are attached to their houses. Like they're attached, and they can't break that attachment enough to go to the light. So I think that's what it is with the original owner of my house. I think he just loved his house so much that he built and that he renovated and Mickey Mouse kind of over the years because it's got a lot of issues. But I think he's just attached to it because he did a lot of it with his bare hands. So I think he's very attached to it, and I think that's why he doesn't want to leave. I've been told his wife never had children, so that's why she doesn't want to leave because she likes to keep an eye on my children because she never had her own to do that with. So I mean, there are reasons why people get stuck where they were. I mean, personally, if I'm a spirit, I'm going to see all the freaking places in the world I never saw before. I'll hop on a boat. I'll hop on a plane. I'll go visit all the countries I never got to see in my life that I wanted to see. Like, why would you stay in the same place you lived for 80, 90 years? Go someplace you never saw before and check it out. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just my personal theory on what I would do if I had full if I could actually realm the earth of spirit, like I'd be going to everywhere I'd be walking through the whole earth. I'd be going to find Bigfoot in the woods because I'd be a ghost and they wouldn't run from me. So, it's do all
Trying to
things you know.
find, yeah, you'd be trying to find out if that UFO thing is real and
Oh,
trying
I
to
think once
track
you're
down.
I think once you're a spirit, you kind of know that. I think that's knowledge that comes with being a spirit, and no longer like you said, no longer having a physical brain to stop you from fully evolving. Who knows what you could do? Who knows? When you're a spirit, you may be able to teleport somewhere else on Earth without just by thinking about it. Like who knows? Like I don't. We don't know what spirits really can do. I've been told by some people what some abilities are, but we don't know what they fully can do. They only know what, and if these people are talking to spirits to find out this stuff, they only know what the spirits are telling them. The spirits could be easily hiding things back and not want to reveal it all. Maybe they can't. Maybe they're not supposed to reveal everything to humans, because then
Yeah.
that's.
It's
I
a
mean,
thing where we're supposed to learn a lesson, and if they tell you everything, that messes that lesson up, and you got to live another lesson.
exactly, exactly, it does. It's exactly. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, we're supposed to learn these lessons in life, and plus, if people find out that as a spirit you can do all this stuff, then what's to stop there from people from just being like, all right, I want to be a spirit now. I'm gonna go find the highest bridge. Like, like it's. I mean, it could be detrimental if it actually happened like that. So who knows? I mean, there are probably multiple reasons why it doesn't happen, but it could. I mean, it's probably for the best, honestly, because otherwise we don't be looking forward to death. Then we wouldn't be looking forward to we wouldn't be living our lives. We would just we'd want to go so we could experience all this. Like why keep living if we could go experience all this as a ghost? Let's go. Like I mean, it's just in my opinion at least. I mean, I don't know. I just know human nature, and that's sadly how humans would act. I mean, they wouldn't be much better if extraterrestrials came down either. That's why the government doesn't tell us things because they're scared of how people are going to react.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people. If the governments of the world came out and said, "Yeah, UFOs are real, we have contact with extraterrestrials," a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, okay, so we knew that already," or "Oh, okay, no big deal." But then there are some people who are very religious, might react badly to it, or you know,
Hmm.
there are some people they call it an ontological shock where it's kind of like such a paradigm shift for you that the idea that that's really happening would just do your brain in, and it would be such a shock. But what are they afraid that the stock market's going to collapse and there'll be a world war? Why don't they tell us there's these UFOs are here?
Well, I mean, I think it is. I mean, the people like you and me, anybody in the paranormal fields, or anybody that likes the paranormal, is not going to be surprised by the news when it happens. We're all going to be the ones that are like, okay, I still got to go to work tomorrow, so what's the difference? But and I mean, yes, it would. Like when they announced during COVID that UFOs, UAPs are real. Okay, you know what? That's good. I was very happy when I heard that because I was like, okay, that's great. They announced it. Good. I mean, they at least they're finally admitting something that everybody else already knew. And I kept working that day. But the people who are so, because I know people like this, who are so naive and who are so egotistical and self-centered that they think that no, there can't be anything else in this universe besides humans. Like, and like you said, the hardcore religious people would be screaming through the streets. There'd be riots. There'd be pleading to the government, please protect us. Like, protect you from what? You don't even know why they're here yet. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're not all here for good things. I'm 100% positive of that because reptilians exist, Hillary Clinton. But I mean, it's just there's good and bad. There's a lot of good and bad and everything, and there's gonna be good and bad extraterrestrials too. I mean, it's just not. It'd be naive to think they're all bad, or it'd be naive to think they're all good because there's always yin and yang for everything in this universe. So.
Yeah, there's so many people who say they've been abducted by aliens, and some of them say it's a good experience, some of them say it's a bad experience. And they had
Oh.
so many different descriptions of UFOs. There are so many shapes that are described, and people
Mm.
who are abducted talk about greys that have slightly different skin colors and different heights. And when they're with them, sometimes they see other ETs there as well. So it gets very complicated.
It does. I mean, there's a lot of different stories out there about it, and you're 100% right about the differences though, because I had a guest on, Danya Dunbar. She wrote a book about this, but she had an extraterrestrial experience when she was out in the desert with a friend on a camping trip of some kind. I don't remember all the details 100%, but her and this extraterrestrial were kind of in a relationship of some sorts. Like all mental, obviously. It's all she said. It's all mental. It's all telepathic. But I've also just had Stephen and Leslie Shaw. Has had a married couple. I just had them both on. Stephen has been abducted by extraterrestrials in his family for 3 generations, and his experiences are not all friendly, nice, warm experiences. There's a lot of probing and a lot of taking of fluids. So, I mean, it's just there's a lot of difference in abduction cases out there. I've heard so many different ones that some of them, yeah, some of them sound nice. Like, I mean, in some of them, you're Christopher Walken dancing with the aliens. And in other ones, it's my God, I'm just gonna blank on the song. It's Fire in the Sky, where it's terrifying and you'd want nothing to do with it. Like, it's just there's a huge difference in what people say about this, and that's why it's maybe it's different species, maybe it's different maybe it's different species, maybe it's different sects of the same species. Who knows? I mean, we don't know all the species that are out there. We know names of a few, of maybe a handful or two handfuls. I mean, we know maybe a dozen names of alien species out there that we've been told by people who supposedly talk to them and by reports of people seeing them and us naming them. But I mean, it's just only thing I've heard bad about the Greys. I've heard bad about the reptilians. I've heard nothing but good about the Arcturians, about the Palladians, and about the Norse. I've heard nothing good about all those. But it's the Greys and reptilians I usually hear bad about. And I've heard some good Grey ones too, I guess. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
There's been some good Grey stories as well that I've heard, but a lot of them are scarier.
Yeah, there's a couple in Australia. There's a guy called, I think it's Paul Hamden. He's been on my podcast with his wife, and they say that they have contact with the Greys, and it's really good. When I interviewed them, I said to them, "Well, when was the last time you encountered them?" And they said, "Oh, they were here last night. They were in the house." And they've got these really big, long books about the Zetas and describing their society and all sorts of things about them. So it was a
Interesting.
fascinating conversation with them. But they also say they're mediums and that they have a kind of mediumistic contact with the Greys, and then they have medium stuff with people who've died. And I said to them,
Mhm.
"Do you ever, do your mediumship and get ETs and deceased people in the same space?" And they said, "No, never. There's never a crossover there."
Which is interesting. I mean, you think there would be, but I mean, maybe it's all about intention. Maybe it's what they're intending to do that day, or or who they're intending to talk to that day, or
But I
maybe
think
it's just because maybe if one's there, they avoid the other. I couldn't tell you, but
the mediums, they'll say they need to raise their vibrations or raise the frequency. And this guy was saying that ETs and spirits are in different frequencies. So it's like tuning your radio into the right frequency.
exactly. I mean, and it does make sense. It honestly does make sense to me. I mean, why wouldn't they be in the different frequencies? It makes sense. I mean, there are probably a lot of frequencies on this earth that we can't get to, that we can't see, and that's where, I mean, all these creatures like shadow people, Hat Man, mirrored men. Maybe that's where all these different creatures come from. Like it's just different. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not just evil creatures that live on our planet, but maybe they're just different dimensions, and that's why our different frequencies, and that's why we're seeing them the way we see them. But they're not. They don't. Maybe they don't even look like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been hypothesized that when people see shadow people, that all they're seeing is another dimension. They're seeing a glimpse of another dimension. Maybe there's a thin line of the fabric between that dimension and at that point. Maybe you're just seeing a glimpse of it, and it's just a shadow of a being.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's weird that they would be human in shape with arms and legs and a head. And maybe it's just our brains imprinting on them so that we can make sense of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I've thought about that as well, and that does make sense to some degree. I mean, humans are very prone to suggestion, even by our own brains. So we tend to find the easiest way to explain things, which is not a bad thing at all. It's a good defense mechanism, but it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I like to see the real thing, you know? I want to see what's really out there. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. Who knows? But I mean, do you get a lot of reports of shit out of people in the UK? I actually don't think I've ever talked to a UK person about this.
I don't know. It's not an area that I'm particularly interested in. I talked to a guy the other day called Mike Ricksecker, who was a guest on my podcast, and he told me about his shadow people experience, and he's written a book about them as well. And he said talks about when he was a kid and he woke up and there was this shadow person on the other side of the room, and it came over to him and moved his arms over his chest like this, and then left the room. And
Hmm.
he said there's no way it was a dream. He was scared out of his life. He was so awake, you know. And after
Yeah.
it left, he could move, but he was paralyzed while it was there.
Huh. I mean, that is a common thing with along with shut people tales is that paralyzation happens. I mean, it could be the human body's response to being so scared, or it just could be maybe they have that ability. I don't know. I mean, I've heard the same thing about extraterrestrials too, though, that some people get like paralyzed within their room, and like they have maybe it's usually believed that, especially with the Greys, as their telepathic abilities, being able to like make it happen.
Yeah.
But
No, I'd
I
do
mean,
it. I mean, if I had to deal with these crazy humans, I'd paralyze them as well.
yeah. Sometimes I wish I had that ability on myself, but it's just I don't know. I mean, these shadow people. It's long been hypothesized that they could be ultra dimensional. That I mean, ultra terrestrial. That they're just coming through dimensional portals when they please, or when there's tears in the fabric a little bit. Or it's also been hypothesized that they're just. I mean, I kind of hypothesized for a long time before I started thinking of the ultra terrestrial thing that they were just like a kind of evolution form of spirits. I mean, that was my idea for a long time, was that they were an evolutionary form of spirits. And but I kind of threw that out the window a little while ago because it's just like that doesn't make as much sense as the ultra terrestrial theory. Like another dimension makes more sense than just being, you know, what spirit evolves into eventually. To me at
Yeah.
least. I mean, maybe there's both that exist. I really don't know, but it's just the theories of this all, you know. And well, actually, okay. But since you're in the UK, I got to ask one of my favorite questions I ask all my British guests.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Highgate vampire legend?
The what? Highgate
Hi-
vampire. Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
So many British people have not heard of this, and it blows my mind. I mean, I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know Highgate Cemetery in London.
Yeah. Yeah.
Supposedly, there's been something in there. There's been many people telling tales of seeing it, of dealing with it. I mean, it's supposedly at night when the gates are all locked on it. There's something in there, and it's become known as the Highgate vampire.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
people think that's just they think it could be something like that that just has lived there for centuries because it's got always got something to feed on. You know, there's always new fresh bodies being put there. So it's I mean people who work there report seeing weird things or signs of weird things when they go in the morning. Like it's just it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's one of the only real vampire cases in modern times, at least in in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, yeah, there's a bunch more in the
Was
Africa
there?
and South American countries. Oh god, yeah. But there's different creatures that are vampiric in those countries, supposedly. But I mean, see, why? I don't know. How do we hear about this? We hear about it over here all the time on podcasts and stuff, the Highgate Vampire. But yet, every British person I ask is like, the what? And it's just man. Yeah. Well, I had to ask. I always have to ask, and eventually, I'm waiting for the day that one of the a British guest actually says, "Oh yeah, I know about that." I'm gonna be like, "Really? Like you think it'd be like a urban legend where you guys are, like or something along those lines?" I mean, especially around the paranormal community. But oh well. Well, Well, actually, let's talk about your past life regression work because that always fascinates me. And I always love to ask this question when it comes to past lives. Have you ever done a regression for somebody who was actually somebody of note in the past life, like somebody famous, somebody legendary?
No, no, I'm just thinking, nobody, no. Everybody seems to have quite normal lives. Some of them can be quite boring or mundane, but they kind of you see something in the past life that can relate to this life, that something that's useful. I've occasionally had people in a war or something traumatic, but certainly not famous.
Ah, see, I'm still waiting for the day I get past life regressions. He's like, oh yeah, I did this guy's past life. He was King Arthur. I'm
Yeah,
still waiting for that day to come. I'm still
I,
waiting for that day to come.
I have talked to a couple of people on the podcast and who do past life regressions and said something like, "Well, I've had four Marilyn Monroes and two Mary Magdalenes, and so I don't know what's going on there, where that's coming from." But
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
how could there be multiple
yeah,
one thing? I mean, it sounds to me like either they're reading it wrong or the person is possibly fibbing about what they're seeing. Maybe.
yeah, or maybe they're just something's there. They believe they're telling it exactly right, and that's the truth, but there's something else going on. I just don't know,
Yeah.
but it hasn't come up with the job I've done.
Mm.
But I
I
have
mean,
had, yeah, sorry, go on.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Uh,
have had, like I've been taken through past life regressions, and I have
yeah.
found things that have kind of verified the life. When I was taken through when I was a child, I saw myself as a child in the past life in this park, and it was very distinct layout in this park, and it was on a very steep slope. And it was 2 years later, I went into a part of London I'd never been to before, and I came across that park exactly as I'd seen it in the past life regression. So for me, that was a little kind of verification that, something was coming through.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely believe. I mean, I've heard enough tales of past lives from. I mean, when all these tales of children come up, like the American boy who was who kept dreaming about being a World War II fighter pilot and knew things he shouldn't have known about. I mean, he even met like the person who was supposedly his co-pilot, and he was able to tell him things that no one else would know. Or the Indian girl who remember her past life where she was married to this man who was still living in her past life, and she described the house perfectly before they even got there. Like it's just there's too many of these tales of past lives from children that it has to be. There's definitely some real to it. There's real to it. I mean, I'm not saying everybody that goes and gets therapy done thinks they have a past life. I'm not saying that they're all 100% accurate, but I'm guaranteeing that 80% of them are. I would think 8% is a safe number.
Yeah, there's people as well who have birthmarks and birth defects that relate to the past life. And there was a kid who had a very strong memories of being a teacher, and he led his grandmother to the previous house and took him in the house, and that was his wife there, and he picked out his children correctly. And I was saying to the wife, "How come you moved the room around? We used to have the cupboard over there." And the wife was saying all this stuff's correct, and the boy said that he was a teacher and he was murdered on the way to school one morning, and
Hmm.
they looked at the autopsy of the guy that was murdered, and then you look at the child, and the child had birthmarks in exactly the same place as the entry and exit wound of the bullet that killed the previous life. So that kind of thing coming up is interesting.
That's trippy. Yeah, that's a really trippy thing right there. I mean, it's creepy. And Harley, if you have something like that happen, you need to tell me about that sometime, please. We can do that in our podcast actually someday. That's a good topic. So we'll get to that eventually. But I mean, it's creepy. It's creepy. It really is. I mean, I've ah, I I mean, I actually have been wanting to get a past life regression done for so long, but just it was actually supposed to happen with the previous guest like 2 years ago, but then she had some kind of family emergency. It didn't happen, and it got put like in the back, got put in the backlog, and just forgotten about it. I'm like, I still want to get that done. Like, I'm so curious. I'm so curious because I mean, it can answer so many questions about your life and why things are the way they are, like why you do things the way you do. Like it's all learned behavior from previous lives. So I mean, who know? It's it's interesting to find out the reasons.
Yeah, when I take people through a past life regression, we go to that space between lives, and hopefully we can meet with your spirit guides and ask them all sorts of things about your past lives and about your current life. And
Hmm.
that's always a fascinating part of a session.
I'm sure. I mean, from what I've heard about, from everything I've heard about spirit guides, always wished. Oh, I know. It always makes me want to have one. Like I know I do. I know everybody does, but trying to reach out to them is a whole nother topic. Like that's a whole nother story. Is trying to reach out to them actually. You have to be able to do it, and apparently I ain't there yet. But working on it. But since you're in the UK, another topic I always love to talk about with my British guest is what do you think about like the fairy dimension? You know, elementals, sprites, all those creatures of well, originally lore and myth we thought, but there's been some proof now.
What you mean also like elves and fairies and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, yeah, you know, the whole I'd call it the fairy realm. Like that's what I call it, it's the fairy realm.
Yeah.
But
Because there is that theory that what we're seeing nowadays as UFOs and ETs is the same
mm,
phenomenon as elves and fairies.
I don't know if I believe that as much. I really don't. I mean, it's possible, but I don't know if I believe that they're the same thing. Like I just part of me doesn't want to. Like part of me wants there to be these ancient creatures that existed before us on this planet and existed with us. Like I mean, could it? Yes. I mean, I see where people are pull the similarities between those two things, and they kind of be like, well, it is this, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's got to be something beyond just the ones that are extraterrestrials mistaken as something else. Like I feel like there has to be some ancient. I mean, because I've had people. I forget who it was, but I had someone from the UK tell me that like he 100% believed in elementals, that he's seen proof of it, that elementals exist on the earth, and that they've always been here. They just hide a lot of the time and don't show themselves. I
Yeah,
mean, what do you think? What?
I haven't come across that. I wonder about consciousness and how consciousness interacts with the world around us, and these weird ideas that are coming up with quantum physics. And
Yes.
we might see, in the old hundreds of years ago, we'd see elves. Now we see aliens, and that's because the way our consciousness is like processing what we're encountering. Or it may be that they just present themselves in something that makes sense to us at this point in our history. And hundreds of years ago, if they would come along as aliens, people like them would have no concept of other planets and other lives. But nowadays, we're surrounded by it. With Star Wars and Star Trek, and just it's everywhere.
Yes, I mean, and actually, I mean, it does make a little sense. I mean, because I mean, we talk about how it's possible that all the ancient gods for Egyptians, Aztecs, and all those other cultures back in ancient times, that their gods were really aliens. Like they're because they just that's why they look like animals, and that's why they depict them as such because they were extraterrestrials, and that's I mean, the whole ancient alien theory. I could go on that for about that for like for hours, but
Yeah.
it's just it's there's a lot of possibility there that the ancient gods were all extraterrestrials in nature for the most part, and that's why they depicted them the way they did in their pyramids, in their temples, because that's what they looked like. Actually, they were or similar to what they look like. Maybe they didn't get a picture 100% right, but it's similar to what they look like. And I mean, chariots in the sky. That was always I always believed what he wrote like that. That was very accurate. So I
Like Eric
mean,
von Daniken. And those the Nazca plains as well. Those those huge drawings that you can only really make sense of what they are from the sky. And when they were made, the people had no way of getting that high.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like they were told to make it, and something from above was watching to make sure it was made right. I mean, I don't know. It's because how, I mean, it's same. I mean, it's the same thing. I don't know. It's strange. It's like crop circles. Like, can't really explain the real ones. I mean, yeah, there's been plenty of fake ones out there that have been admittedly fake, but you can't really explain the real crop circles, like the ones that no one takes credit for, the ones that definitely couldn't have been human made because there's just no way in hell that could be possible with the designs they do. It's just it's crazy. I mean, yeah, I before my audience goes crazy, I saw the videos in the '90s of the two guys in the UK explaining how they did it with wooden boards and rope and all that. But I remember that watching that episode of Unsolved Mysteries, like, oh God, no, why? This is detrimental to everything that us who believe extraterrestrials want to happen. Like,
Yeah, there's weird stuff with crop circles. I've heard that they've analyzed the crop, and there's kind of tiny little kind of bulbs of explosions or something they kind of call it. It sort of looks like the crop's been through a microwave oven in the
yeah,
way it's made up. And I also heard there was a guy who was part of a crew that make crop circles, and he had a dream of a diagram, a design for a crop circle. And he went out with his crew one night to make it, and there was another crew. They had exactly the same design. And it was like, how did that happen? Because these people don't share the designs with each other.
yeah, of course not.
So there was something weird happening there as well. But it's like you say, some crop circles are made by people and some are something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I love when people, I love when I see like a meme that's like shows a crop circle and somebody else like, what is that? Oh, it's just an alien gang sign. Like, I love those. I love that. That makes me laugh every time because it's like, oh, what if that is just like what if the territory marking by a certain species, and that's where they put it here is to say like, we claim this planet. Like,
Yeah. And there's
I
so
don't
many
know.
different designs. There's so many different aliens claiming the planet.
Well, that's what's gonna. I have a feeling that is what's kind of happening. But I mean, that's why because there was just something the other day in the news about someone seeing a ship over. I want to say I just saw this. It's gonna escape me now, but I mean, well, UFOs are seen every day. That's not that big in news. But why do you think they abduct us though? That's kind of I always like to ask that question. What's your theory on why they abduct us? I mean, I've been told by some abductees why they think they got abducted, but what's your theory about it?
I don't know what's going on. I know it's this thing where I've been reading books on abduction since the 1980s, and I've talked to so many people who've had these experiences, and you get those contradictory stories about how some people say it's good, some say it's bad. People are introduced to hybrid children, and it seems to have changed over the years where it went through this period where there was hybrid children and women were losing babies. They'd wake up one morning and they were no longer pregnant. And nowadays it seems like that part of the program, that whatever ET's program is complete, and now they're moving on to the next stage. And so it's almost impossible to work out, because there's this part of abductions called high strangeness, which I'm really interested in. I find that whole area of it, the weirder it is, the more interested I am.
I mean, I, I mean, the guests I just had on that were abductees, Stephen Leslie Shaw, they said it's all for genetic material still to this day. That at least for one species, it's for genetic material, and that's what they are doing it for. And I mean, it makes sense because he reported that he's had needles stuck into his stomach and lower to extract things, and he remembers it all.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, and he did have actually a what he believes was a tracking device taken out of his body, like a piece of metal, like a lot of abductees have had taken out of their body, and like everybody else, like every other person who's had taken out, the doctors study it and they say a lot of this is metal not found on anywhere on Earth. We don't know what this is. So I mean, it's are they tracking us? Like are they putting tracking chips in us like we would for dogs or cows? Or I
Yeah,
mean,
maybe it's used to monitor our health.
maybe. I mean,
And they might
poss-
see us as we're I don't know, we're a lab rat, so they're doing experiments. They want to monitor the health to see how the lab rat is getting on.
but see, the idea. Well, you were talking about earlier about like pregnant women no longer being pregnant. I I have theories on that because I proposed this to Leslie and Steven too, and they kind of said it sounds plausible that maybe that's where all these star seeds that have been popped up in the last 10 years, maybe they are actually hybrids. Maybe they were women that got impregnated and then they got abducted afterwards, and aliens kind of fused their DNA into it a little bit. Like maybe that's what they're working on, and who knows? Maybe that's what the government is gonna admit to in 2027. Because I heard in 2027 that the government's gonna be admitting something. That's the number that keeps popping up with all these mediums and psychics. Is that 2027 is gonna be a big year for extraterrestrial news. So maybe that's what they're going to announce. Is that 30, 40 years ago they made a deal with some extraterrestrials to let them run Operation Starseed.
Yeah,
Like,
I wonder about if the ETs are doing a disclosure, and for them, their timeline is over 200 years or 500 years, and they very,
yeah,
very slowly trickle information about themselves into society. So eventually, when they show themselves, nobody's surprised.
yeah. I mean, I think it's what it is. I mean, think because if you think about it, like all these science fiction movies too with extraterrestrials in them, like you were saying earlier, and all the other ones that are not like franchise based, but are more like one offs. Some of these are very close to what we already kind of know happens. I mean, I've heard tale from interviews I've heard on podcasts that the the guy who wrote and directed Predator, his father was in the military, and he based the aliens off of stories his father told them about aliens with camouflage technologies. I mean, maybe not the whole hunting humans thing. I don't know if that part was true, but the camouflage part, there's been plenty of experiences people have had where they are looking at something and it looks like something's camouflage running through the woods, or something's or it looks like a whole section of the woods is camouflage. Like even, I mean, there was this. I don't know if you ever heard of Monsters Among Us podcast. It's a very popular paranormal podcast in America. But one of the stories that got called into it was this guy stopped off at like a little pit stop on the edge of the road just to go in the woods, go bathroom. And he was going to the bathroom and I was looking in the woods, and all of a sudden he got done and he looked up, and where there was just woods seconds ago, it was like a army troop. They were doing some kind of practices. And does the army already have this camouflage technology because of extraterrestrials? Like that they can make a whole section of woods be camouflaged so that no one can see them? Like that's I don't know. It's jaw dropping and mind bending that this could really be out there already.
Yeah, and people talk about the Oz factor, don't they, around UFOs, where it seems like all the animals go silent, and maybe time changes a little bit. Time the way they'll be in that space, and then they'll come out, and they've only been in 10 minutes, but 45 minutes has passed for everyone else.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean if you look at Betty and Barney Hill, like their car stopped and time stopped when they were abducted. And I mean it makes sense to me that maybe it's just the technology they use to build these crafts. They have to be able to fly through either dimensions or space, whichever way they're coming, because there's debate on that. But either way, you have to play with time, because you have to play with light speed, especially if you're coming from space. So why wouldn't the energies that whatever they're burning in those things puts out kind of mess with that on Earth. Like, why wouldn't it kind of mess with time or mess with memory, mess with your space? Like, it would mess with all of it. So, I mean, it makes sense to me in a way. It really does. And I don't know. It's just, it's all kind of, it's all creepy, which is the part I love about it. But it's also fascinating as could be because there's so much we don't know. It's just all hypothesis and theories at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel the more I learn, it tells me the less I know.
Exactly. Exactly. I almost wanted to finish that sentence for you because it's so true. It's so true. I mean, when I started this podcast, I had all my theories. They were there. They were, to me, 100% correct. Nope. Every guest finds a way to blow one of them apart somehow. And I was like, okay, now I got to rethink. Now I got to rethink this. I mean, I've said before on the show, but I do plan on writing a book sometime in the future. I think once I hit 1,000 guests, I might actually write a book. But I want to hit that goal mark first and, you
Yeah.
know, get all that information in my head and then formulate. But it's crazy. It's really crazy. There's so much in this world that we don't know. But folks, to find out more about that, you already listen to my podcast, so thank you. But I'll let Simon tell you about another great podcast that you could find because he has his own similar podcast in some ways, but I'm sure it's very different in other ways. And why don't you tell me about that for the last few minutes, like what your podcast is about?
Yeah, so our paranormal afterlife is looking for evidence of an afterlife. That's the main or the basic thing of it. You know, if somebody says, yeah, there's definitely an afterlife, my question is, oh, where's the evidence? Go on then, prove it. So when I look at near death experiences and this thing where people can be out of their side of their body and they'll see something. And then afterwards, when they wake up, they'll talk about it. And people can say to them, well, you were dead when that happened. You couldn't have seen that. And there's some verification there that the out of body experience was real. And then there's children with past life memories, and they're all verified. And we have shared death experiences and deathbed visions and mediumship. And I talk to all these different people who have all these uh, experiences and they have expertise. Just about all my guests have got a book out, and I try and read as much as their book as I can before I interview them. And so it's
Oh,
over 300 episodes I've done our Paranormal Afterlife. And I got the same process for my other podcast, which is called the Alien UFO Podcast. And that's over 120 episodes now. So it's been a real education talking to these people and reading these books.
well, you got one up on me because trying to read a book before I get someone on the show is damn near impossible for me.
Yeah.
I haven't picked up a book in 2 years at least. I mean, it's just life. But so I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I have people send me their books before they come on. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm gonna have a time to even crack it, but I'll try. I'll try my damnedest.
Yeah.
But it's just I have a big list of books that a lot of my previous guests have put out that I are all their books are on the list, and eventually someday I'll read them all. But you're gonna have to wait probably till I'm retired and my kids are fully grown and I have much more time in my hands. So, but I do want to thank you for coming on, Simon, because it's been an amazing, fun show. We got to hypothesize and theorize and talk about a lot of great things. But where can people find your work and you if they want to contact you?
Well, my website is pastliveshypnosis.co.uk. And that is, for the past life regression, people can book a free call with me, a 20-minute call on Zoom, where they can talk to me about past life regression if they want to do one and why they would want to do it. And my calendar's on the website, so people can just go in and book that.
Well, there you go. There you go, folks. If you're interested at all, give Simon hit Simon's site and see. For all my listeners, his website will be in the description as always. And I do want to thank all my listeners for listening, and I want to thank all my watchers who were watching today because there's a lot of you. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. And okay, Harley said it was a good show, so everybody else on Twitter is being quiet, but If you can still comment on next, I don't know. Things keep going back and forth with that. But thank you all for joining. And you don't know where to find me by now, just shame. But check the outro. Check the outro, listeners. You find me there. Everything is there. And I will be back on Monday with another interview. Till then, have a good weekend, everybody.